Live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, yeah, I tell you what, it's Monday. It's Monday all day long. Feels like it's a Monday. It feels like it might even be Monday again tomorrow. I don't know, but it's Monday, and we're going to take you all the way to go home time so we can get through Monday, and that is Big Rig pushing the buttons on the board. How you doing, buddy?
Good.
Good. How's your weekend?
Good. Busy.
Does it feel like Monday?
Feels exactly like Monday.
We're going to go for a tone change. All right, man, we got a great show laid on for you. At 3 o'clock today, Caroline Dobson, who is the Republican candidate for Congress down in Congressional District 2, is going to be on the air with us. Y'all, we got to hold that seat. We cannot give away part of our delegation to the Democrat Party. That's what I'm saying. So Caroline Dobson is the GOP candidate for District 2. We will have her on at 3 o'clock and look forward to that conversation. At 4 o'clock, State Auditor Andrew Sorrell is also going to be on the line with us. He just had a thing happen. I don't know if you saw it, but on 1819 News, he wrote a piece talking about how he had been debanked. Debanked. What does that mean? That means a bank just said, you know what, we're not doing business with you anymore because he sells firearms? What? Yeah, we'll talk to State Auditor Andrew Sorrell about that at 4 o'clock. So you're going to want to hear that conversation. And then I got a whole triple dipper just full of stuff, man, so hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. Number 1 on the Triple Dipper, I'm calling it the down ballot. You know, a lot of folks, it's so easy to get caught up in who's running for governor, who's running for president, but there's so many things that ride the coattails of those races. We call them the down ballot races. Well, I'm going to focus on down ballot in terms of Congress and Senate, because you know what? If Trump gets elected president, but we can't do anything through the legislative process to get him bills to sign, we are stymied. And yes, I know he had that majority before, but he also had John McCain and he had, Chuck, well, anyway, the bottom line is he had a different crew. I am hopeful that we can see some new and better things happen. So we're going to talk about the down ballot races and why we need to be focused on those as much as anything. Number 2 on the Triple Dipper, the IDF raid. Y'all, this past weekend, Israeli Special Operations, and I'll talk about it more in a minute in my monologue, but Israeli Special Operations led an amazing raid on a Hamas terror cell and were able to repatriate 4 hostages. What's crazy is the way the media is portraying it. The hostages were released. No, they weren't. They were taken back. And this is a great mission. This is the kind of mission that should fire you up. The IDF raid, that's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, in conjunction with our conversation with State Auditor Andrew Sorrell on the debanking, I'm going to talk about over your shoulder. So who all's looking over your shoulder right now? Should you be looking over your own shoulder? What is happening with people prying into your information and then using it against you? Is that legal? Is that constitutional? Can they do that? Well, I got news. Insurance companies, banks, all of them. I'm going to get all your conspiracy theory hackles raised on this one. That's over your shoulder, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, listen, I'm going to jump into my monologue here, the right side way. And I got to tell you, this one is actually pretty epic, pretty cool. A story broke this past weekend that, in my opinion, is not getting near enough attention. It's the kind of story that we need more of. It's the kind of story that they make into movies and write books about. It's reminiscent of the raid to kill bin Laden or to attempt the rescue of the U.S. hostages held in Iran. It was a special operations mission that was executed with precision, lethality, and success. But what got me in the middle of it all was the way it was described by one of the key spokesmen who presented the facts to the nation. He said that the heroism that day was on the scale of Judah Maccabee. Judah Maccabee. That's a key description. So if you don't know, Judah Maccabee was a stud. He was a freedom fighter. He was a Jew who lived in Judea in 139 BC. He led a Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Greeks who were oppressing the Jewish people at the time. The Maccabees were described by Greek general Bacchides as being, quote, stronger than lions, lighter than eagles, and faster than bears. If your opposing commander describes you that way, it means something. And for Israeli officials today to use a description of one of their own in a current mission as being on par with Judah Maccabee, it says that not only was there heroism, but there was also heroism that was known by their enemies, and it was needed to overthrow an oppressive effort to harm the Jewish people. It was also worth noting that Judah Maccabee was finally killed in battle, but that his death rallied the rest of the fighters, and eventually the Greeks were actually ousted from their lands. So the fight of the Maccabees is part of the foundation for the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah to this day. And to be described as a soldier in modern Israel as a Maccabee, that's high praise. And that is also a rallying cry. And that has some pretty deep, significant meaning. Look, on October 7th of last year, Israel suffered through their own version of 9/11. By a pro rata comparison, the number of deaths in Israel on that one day was larger by comparison to its population than 9/11 was to the United States. But it went beyond a single terrorist incident. It was a wholesale day of infamy in which innocent women were targeted for rape, babies were beheaded, innocent school children were murdered in front of their parents, and all of it was filmed so that Hamas terrorists could then, laugh over it later. Hamas has used the images they took of their atrocities and used them as a fundraising tool. But then to add fuel to the fire, Hamas decided to take hostages. Hostages. Not POWs, military members who were captured on the field of battle. No. They took hostages, innocent civilians who were ripped from their homes, taken captive at a music festival, and carted away to use as bargaining chips and human shields. And by the way, 5 of those hostages are Americans, American citizens. And yet the Biden administration is soft on Hamas because they fear being seen as too pro-Israel by their liberal base. Look, Hamas are savages. Hamas's actions are some of the most savage, evil, and bloodthirsty the world has seen in the modern age. I mean, who does that? Who does these things? What kind of person acts like that? The kind of person that does these things is the kind that needs to die, in my opinion. And so as the soft hands of the campus protesters try to engage in the argument that Hamas and the Palestinian people are somehow the victims, Israel has set about righting a wrong. For decades, I mean literally decades, Hamas has been a thorn in Israel's side. Rocket attacks, useless rhetoric, bombings. But October 7th, though, that was an act of terror writ large. And Israel has been at work ensuring that Hamas never has a chance to do it again. And this past weekend, after over 230 days of captivity, Israeli Special Operations conducted a rescue that was well executed and resulted in the rescue of 4 hostages. This past weekend, the 98th Division of the Israeli Defense Forces conducted what seemed like another military maneuver, but it was really a strategic diversion. You see, from the perspective given by liberals and their allies in the media, the war in Gaza is just Israel blowing up buildings and exterminating innocent civilians in the street, but not so. Hamas has tunnels and weapons caches everywhere. Booby traps are prevalent, and the fighting is still very intense. Nearly 50 Israeli soldiers have lost their lives since the fighting began, with 24 of those being killed on the same day back in January. This past weekend, when the 98th Division moved on its targets, it drew the attention of Hamas fighters, and it served to distract them from the real target. And the rescue by Israel's elite counter-terror unit called Yamam, in the middle of the raid to rescue the 4 hostages, a massive firefight broke out. Hamas fighters using small arms and RPGs fought back and were able to disable one of the Yamam vehicles, which put the mission in jeopardy. Israeli forces then launched a counterattack, an evacuation mission. We're told that Israel's Southern Command then launched additional forces to move in and set up a perimeter around the team. They fought throughout the operation, they shielded the 4 hostages, and during that mission, they lost the Special Operations Commander, who was mortally wounded and died later in the hospital. But 4 innocent hostages, they are now home. They were rescued. All 4 of them have been taken by Hamas while they attended a simple musical festival. Just unarmed innocent civilians who were assaulted and abused and then dragged away to remain hidden and mistreated by Hamas for nearly 8 months. One of them was a young lady, 26-year-old Noah Argamani, a young lady who had been seen on a Hamas propaganda video screaming as a Hamas terrorist drove away with her on his motorcycle. She was later used by Hamas in another propaganda video in January, looking gaunt and distressed. Noah was returned home, reunited with her family, including her mother, who was dying from stage 4 brain cancer. Look, every bit of this story is just epic in its scale. The mission was over an hour on the ground. The planning was intense with mock buildings and rehearsals, operational security to make sure no leaks gave the target away. The target building was actually a civilian apartment building. The reactions from around the world and the world's media are classic as they try to say that Israel targeted civilians. Yeah, guilty civilians that were holding innocent civilians hostage. But like I said, there was also the tragedy of one heroic Yamam fighter who died from wounds received in the operation. And while the whole story is epic in its scale, one of the things that got me was how he was described to the people of Israel. Israel's defense minister said that his name was Arnon Zamora, and that he, quote, lived and fell a hero. The mission has now been renamed for history as Operation Arnon in his memory. It's said that on October 7th, back last year, Arnon Zamora had responded by taking up arms to defend the community of Yad Mordecai. But the reactions from officials about this mission this weekend and his death, they didn't stop there. Foreign Minister Israel Katz conveyed his condolences and then paraphrased King David's lament for King Saul by saying, "Your glory, Israel, is slain on your high places. How the mighty have fallen." Other officials also praised his effort, even likened him to the legendary figure, like I said before, of Judah Maccabee. You see, here's the thing. Israel does not see this as a mere fight. They liken this to the historical struggle to not just defeat an enemy, they liken it to the historical struggle to simply exist as a people. They invoke the words of King David and the memory of the Maccabees as figures who are based in part on faith, but also on the history of the Jewish people who have fought and died and then fought again against people who hate them simply because they live. Look, I suspect that all the campus protests, the flag burnings, and the media hand-wringing are not going to be what brings this fight to an end. I suspect that Arnon Zamora's death and the rescue of 4 innocent hostages and the fight this past weekend is going to serve as a rallying cry. I say that, I think Hamas's days are numbered. Israel's moving like Maccabees, and they don't show any signs of letting up. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, the bottom line is, when you hear them call out a fallen soldier in Israel and liken him to a name like Judah Maccabee, they're not just saying that he was a hero. They're invoking the spirit of what they believe he stood for, a legendary figure in their own history that stood for overthrowing the oppressors and clearing the land of the people that would do harm to the Jews. I'm just saying. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense just like a superpower up in here. I got a bunch of text messages already going. If you want to text it in or call it in, the number is the same for both, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Let me see what I got so far. Tyler from Huntsville says that bank better not be Redstone Federal Credit Union. To my knowledge, it is not, man. I think your accounts are safe. But if I find out which bank it is, I'll let you know. Shannon from Boaz says, I guess in regards to the monologue, says this is the violence in Genesis 6:11, talking about the earth being filled with violence. The Hebrew word for violence is Hamas. Is it really? I've not heard that before, about the Hebrew word for violence. Anyway, wow. Okay, I need to check that out. Shannon from Boaz, thank you. David from Bucky's, he says, Phil, keep hearing the so-called major news outlets about the raid is the number of Palestinians killed. Yeah, I know. No mention of how many of those were killed were actually Hamas terrorists. I know. This is, the narrative is, Israel's so heavy-handed. They're so heavy-handed. How about this? You held these innocents prisoner for 230 days, like 8 months. And you held them in like apartment buildings where civilians may reside. But guess what? Some of those civilians were complicit. And secondly, I got news. In the end, Israel was getting their people back. And that's what mattered. I have a hard time feeling any sympathy for the Hamas generated situation. Who does this? Let's take these and we will use them for leverage to gain our negotiating power. After you just like raped women and beheaded babies and killed people wantonly, you're gonna hold people hostage like human shields? We will put them in places where civilians live so the Israelis will not bomb us. At some point, Israel has no choice now. Anyway, all that to say, moving along. Chris from Gadsden says, so the hostages were, quote, released in the same way that they were, quote, released in Entebbe, 1976? Exactly. Jeff from Indiana says, Phil, sadly enough, there's not going to be any peace in the Middle East until Palestinians have been dispersed into the nations that supported them, which I believe would be the righteous thing to do since they've been using them as cannon fodder. Yeah, at some point you'd think that Iran would stop just funding Hamas and say, hey, come home to us. But they won't. They won't do that. Yeah. John from Huntsville, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, I was wondering if you saw any of Pat Sajak's final episode of Wheel of Fortune. He's always got the odd out of left field question. I did not, man. I did not. But I have fond memories of Wheel of Fortune, but I did not see Pat Sajak's final episode. If there's something unique or interesting about it, I'd love to know. Tracy from Athens says, this current administration does nothing above and beyond to help Israel and God's people. If anything, Bribin, he says, as in Biden, Bribin and his ghouls are working against Israel behind the scenes. Yeah, I'll say this. There was some indication in some of the media that the U.S. had provided some measure of support to the Israelis in this operation. I don't know what that means. Intelligence, satellite imagery, on the ground, human, I don't know. Signals intelligence, who knows? Maybe provided some jamming capabilities. Or for that matter, maybe there are operators involved, helping, at the very least do the rehearsals and train. But even as I speak right now, CNN is showing images of Israeli forces when they stormed the buildings. It was a no-fooling mission, y'all. There's going to be a book written about it, I guarantee. I just hope that they can find more of them. Because the fact that, and by the way, do not lose sight of the fact that you have 5 Americans being held hostage over there. How often do you hear the Biden administration talk about that? Not often. If there were, I mean, I don't know how to say this, but under any other administration, American hostages being held would be the result, would result in massive pressure being put on. And yet, for some reason, I think Biden is detached. He's been very, very busy. He's been very busy just trying to keep up with his daily schedules. You understand? Had to put a lid on things by 2 o'clock. All said and done, more to come, but we got 5 Americans. And I'd like to see a rescue op by Delta or SEAL Team 6. Just saying. I think it would do me right. Probably do a lot of us right. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Like covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, Alabama. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. All right, I got a text from Michael from Montiana, by the way. With regards to the hostages and the Americans being held, he says they don't have a WNBA player. I know exactly what he's saying. Brittany Griner, the female WNBA player who got taken prisoner in Russia. Yeah, next thing you know, we're leaving other people there to make sure we get her out because wow, you got a gay minority figure basketball player. That looks great for the base. Get her out first. And so, anyway, I hear what you're saying. All right, let's talk for a minute here. Coming up at the top of the hour, we're going to have Caroline Dobson on. She is the GOP candidate for the brand spanking new Congressional District 2. Y'all, I cannot begin to describe to you how important the down ballot races are. I mean, it is so easy for us to go, Trump, Biden, Biden, Trump, Biden. And then, in other years, we talk about who's running for governor. Here's the deal, folks. With the three branches of government, we've got two of them at the federal level that are elected. But even still, who you put into the U.S. Senate are the ones that do the confirmations processes for the ones who are in the executive branch doing the nominating for the Supreme Court justices. Those are huge deals right now. Now, I could talk about everything being important all the way down to who's the dog catcher in your community. I mean, I know of situations where offices that you never think of before, like county coroner, where someone was indicted for corruption because they were stealing from the dead people's houses where they were going to verify their death. I mean, you can really have the wrong people in any office and screw things up. But let me just focus on one. Let's talk about the legislative branch in D.C. We have got to get back the House and Senate. Now, for those of y'all that want to jump in and go, Phil, Trump had the House and Senate for a period of time and we didn't get enough done. You got a lot done. Now, let me ask you this. Would you rather him just not have the House and Senate? Does that make it better? No. If you're going to go ahead and bring up the past and go, we didn't get enough done then, and that's your excuse for not worrying about it now, that's like just, self-flagellation there. There's nothing to that argument. We absolutely have to have all of the above. Now, I'll take some before none, yes. So I would absolutely prefer to have a Trump administration in there as opposed to a Biden administration. Can't possibly stand another 4 years of what we're looking at. As a conservative talk show guy, I can be honest with you, if Biden got elected, I would have a target-rich environment to work with for 4 more years. But I don't want that. I don't want it so that I can have things to talk about on my show. I'd much rather talk about, remember back when Biden used to be here, how good it is now? I'd much rather be in that spot. However, for a minute here, let's talk for about the down ballot races. Because people oftentimes get lost in the weeds about what is happening with races. And sometimes they also get so focused on just where they live, they forget that other races may need their attention. If you remember, we had John Wall, chairman of the Alabama Republican Party, on most recently. I think it was last week. I think it was last week he was on. And we had him on to talk about a variety of things, but one of the things he said was, we will once again be taking people from Alabama where we feel fairly secure about the vote and taking them to other states to, basically be a part of campaigns. There's that. Then you've got, if you live in North Alabama, if you're in this listening area, the southern edges of my listening area are in what is now known as Congressional District 2. We run the risk of that having been a Republican-held seat for many years going to a Democrat because the court redrew the lines. And we are stuck with it for now. Caroline Dobson is running a solid race. She beat a longtime friend of mine, Dick Brubaker. I love Dick Brubaker. And to be honest with you, Caroline Dobson is a good candidate. I feel very confident in who she is. I have no reason not to. We need her to win that race. So if you live in North Alabama and you're thinking, what can I do to help? How can I? And you think, okay, I live in Adderholt's district or I live in Mike Rogers' district, and they're not going to face any competition really. You might want to go south and knock doors or run phones or something for a day or three for Caroline Dobson. Or you might look at it and go, you know what? I've got friends with a house in Montana. I'm going to take some time, go out to Montana and work for that guy, that former Navy SEAL guy. What's his name? Sheehy. I'm going to go up there and help Sheehy. Or you like Kerry Lake out in Arizona. Just know this. They will take you in a heartbeat and put you to work. And especially if you go through your state party. If your state party calls ahead and said, we've got 5 people that want to come knock on doors, send them. That's amazing. Those down ballot races, I can't say enough about them. Let's take a look at a few. I mentioned one a moment ago. Let me just bring it up now. So there are some races right now that are leaning or toss-ups. So the way they rate these things is they call it, they'll call it toss-up, meaning we don't know. They'll say lean Democrat or lean Republican, which means the race is leaning that way, but it's within the margin of error and they can't be sure. And then they'll call it, like firm or confident or, basically it's going to be a Republican or a Democrat and they already got it locked in. So Republican U.S. Senate candidate, according to 2news.com out in Montana, U.S. Senate candidate Tim Sheehy embraced his status as an outsider who came to Montana to start his business as he fought to fend off concerns over wealthy newcomers driving up property taxes and yada, yada, yada. The bottom line is this. Tim Sheehy is a former Navy SEAL who served admirably for a number of years. He's 37 years old now. He went home and he started a business, and I believe it's an aerospace company, and he is now basically rocking it. John Tester is the Democrat incumbent in that race. John Tester is considered to be one of the most vulnerable Democrats on the ballot right now. His unfavorables are strong enough at home to where he's considered lean. Sheehy is considered strong enough to make him worry. And as we speak, that race right now, we only need a couple of seats to gain the majority in the U.S. Senate. A couple. It's actually a very difficult year for incumbent Democrats in the Senate right now. But Tim Sheehy's making it even tougher for him. And I like that. So if you want to go fight for a Navy SEAL, just know this. Sheehy's doing everything he can to lump in Tester with Joe Biden. Widespread public dissatisfaction about the administration's struggles to stem illegal immigration and all the things you can imagine. But he's fighting to gain a seat that could give us the potential for a majority in the Senate. Tim Sheehy, that's a race to watch, in my opinion, out in Montana. By the way, I love Montana. You ever been to Montana? You ever play any gigs up there? Yeah, it's a beautiful state, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I mean, it's like when they call it big sky country, it just is. It's like you can see the blue sky forever. Yeah, I spent some time training in Montana around Helena, and just a gorgeous state.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that I'm leaving Alabama, but if I had a second place to go to, it'd probably be Montana. Here's another one. Larry Hogan. Yes, I know he's a centrist. Yes, he's a moderate Republican. Very much so. He's also not much of a Trump fan. Guess what? He may be a moderate, but he's our moderate. Just saying. But he's in Maryland. He's the former governor of Maryland. He governed as a Republican in what is known to be a fairly deep blue state. And right now, he is running a pretty solid race for the U.S. Senate against a guy named Alsobrooks, Democrat Angela Alsobrooks. So Hogan is now the official Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. A moderate guy? Yeah, I know. So here's the thing. You may think, all right, I can't support a moderate. Would you rather have the Democrat? That's where we have to be on some of this. I am not advocating for watering down standards. That was for the primary. Now we're in the general. In the primaries where you get to pick the kind of Republican you want. Once the votes are in on the primary and you got a Republican and a Democrat and maybe a independent or a Green Party or whatever, that's when you say, okay, this is the one I've got. Well, we may not vote in Maryland, but you can help in Maryland. So right now, Larry Hogan, if you're a moderate, which I think most of my audience is not, most of us are like super conservative. You're more like Tim Sheehy, Montana kind of people, Kerry Lake, Arizona kind of people. But for right now, we're looking at the balance of the power in the Senate is potentially tipping, and Larry Hogan, down ballot, former Republican governor in Maryland. He's got name ID. He's got the ability to take it all the way. I don't think that he would be too much of an issue in the Senate. I think he might oppose some of the more conservative things that would try to happen. But the reality is he'll oppose a whole lot less than the Democrat Alsobrooks would. All right, what other races do we have? So let me just tell you, in a minute when I get back from this break, I'm going to tell you about Kerry Lake. This race is interesting out now. So right now I've got a liberal piece from Roll Call. It's liberal. I know it's liberal. I'm reading it from Phil, did you go to Roll Call? I did. When we get back, I'm going to tell you about that one, Texas, Louisiana, and then we're going to talk to Caroline Dobson, Alabama District 2, down yonder in the Montgomery area. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. Just making it cool to be a conservative. Giving you all the truth to put on a bumper sticker. So I got some text messages I'll jump on here. Oh, look, Mike from Huntsville, our resident hater. By the way, at least he listens to the show. Mike from Huntsville says, so you're a veteran that supports Trump? Are you a sucker or a loser? Republicans have no scruples. Oh, we got the good laughter off that one. Oh, Mike, there's a cure for your ails, man. It's called Election Day, and I have a feeling you're going down, brother. Come back to the fold. Gary from Decatur says, for all those who say Trump had both houses for a while and didn't get enough done, I'll only say this. Collins, Murkowski, Romney, McCain, Graham, McConnell, Ryan, McCarthy, and Buck. Yep, there they are. There's the motley crew. Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you listing the names because you are so right, man. Of course, I look at those, and you got a few of them that are no longer there, and we'll just see how it plays out. Some of those too, by the way, I think they thought Trump was a fluke. I think they thought they could get rid of Trump. I remember back when the Republicans took the Alabama State House in 2010, and for the first 4 years, it was like madness. We were constantly dealing with the teachers union. We were constantly dealing with, and then the second 4 years it calmed down. And I told somebody, I said, I think they thought we were a fluke. I think they thought they'd just take it back right away. No big deal. We'll get it back in the next election. Let's make their life miserable. And it didn't work. And I think some of these, like if you notice, Lindsey Graham's all about Trump now. Some of these folks have resigned. Some have retired. Some have moved on their way. I think that it could potentially be a much more conducive environment to getting something done with a second round of Trump. Ken from Remlap said Trump was fighting a war on two fronts. He tried to get things done. His own party was part of the problem. We need unity in Washington. At the very least, we need unity in our own party. How about that? Anyway, Scott from Somerville said it was hard for President Trump to get much done when his own party fought him at every step. So if he got anything done, that was amazing. We got the Trump tax cuts. We had the military in a much better position. We were respected on the world stage. We had the Abraham Accords bringing peace to the Middle East. We had some amazing things that really happened. And by the way, do not ever take for granted the fact that the court system, to include the Supreme Court of the United States, had nominees that were appointed under the Trump administration that have changed the dynamic of where we stand for conservative values in the legal system. Pastor Barnes from Hartselle says, Phil, why isn't evil incompetent Joe Biden, that's a hashtag, evil incompetent Joe Biden, or his wonderful Secretary of Homeland Security having something to say about all the Russian warships in Cuba? Pastor Barnes, I'm not even talking about that, so I don't know how to answer your question, but thank you for the YouTube connection, and when I have time, I'll take a look at it. Missy from Faultville, I got your comparison. The basketball player arrested for drugs by Russia. It was an everyday story, probably because LGBTQ stuff, although it's a man. So we don't even know the names of the hostages. We do know the names of the hostages in Israel. I've got them right here in my stack of resources for that dipper. All right, let's talk about down ballot races. Going back to this thing, and by the way, coming up in a few minutes, we'll take the break at the top of the hour. We'll come back with Caroline Dobson, who's running for Congress to represent you as a part of the U.S. delegation for the state of Alabama. So right now, we're looking at several things that are happening. One of the races that has gotten a lot of attention is Kari Lake. A lot of folks remember Kari Lake when she was running for governor, and she lost, by the way, to Katie Hobbs, a liberal Democrat who ran a very tepid campaign. Arizona is a purple state. But Katie Hobbs is back now running for U.S. Senate. She has the name ID. Unfortunately, she also has some unfavorables because people know her name, and those who already didn't like her remember they didn't like her. But she's been running a solid race against a guy named Ruben Gallego, who's a Democrat congressman, who does not have a lot of name ID statewide. But right now, if you look at rollcall.com, somewhat of a liberal piece written on this thing. They're saying that Joe Biden's mediocre polling numbers have got Trump up in Arizona 49-42, but the same poll showed Ruben Gallego leading Kari Lake 45-41. What that tells me is you've got a lot of independents who don't care about party who are going to vote for who they like best. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that means that your you're not as reliant upon the true base. So right now, Carrie Lake, who's a decided conservative and very much a Trump-endorsed conservative, is dealing with one poll showing that while Trump's ahead in that poll, that she's down in that poll. However, she's down by the margin of error. Margin of error means if they say the poll shows you at, 52-48 with a 4-point margin of error, that means it could go 4 points either way based upon the dynamics of the race and the calculations they used, which means that 52-48 would still be within the margin of error. In this case, I do believe she's just about the margin of error, not quite. That being said, we got about a half dozen opportunities to take over. We got swing races right now in Ohio, Montana, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Maryland. And those races, though, are likely considered more favorable. They lean more. And these polls come out. Sometimes these polls are done, and I believe they're skewed, for the sole purpose of scaring away donors who then decide to put their money into some other race. Well, right now what we're looking at is Ohio, Montana, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Maryland, and I would suggest even Arizona. And in the House, I would say Alabama could go somewhere that is going to have resources. In Texas, you got a situation. Last minute here before the break. In Texas, you got a situation where you got Henry Cuellar, longtime Democrat congressman, just indicted on bribery charges. Suddenly his seat's in play. And he's got a retired Navy guy named Jay Furman who's probably going to win the runoff and be the guy against him for the Republican Party. And then in Louisiana is anybody's guess. Right now, you've got a guy named, you've got a Republican who's running in a seat that has just been redrawn by the courts. Everybody knows it's drawn in favorable to Democrats, but the 3-judge panel just threw out the map. And so right now we're questioning what district are they even running for over there right now? We don't know. It's crazy. But the bottom line is Louisiana could have a House seat in play. Y'all, the margins are so narrow right now that every down ballot race matters. And coming up next, you're about to hear from Caroline Dobson, Alabama, Congressional District 2, the brand new District 2, and she is fighting to keep a seat out of the hands of a Democrat. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on this Monday, and I've been talking about what I call the down ballot races. We've got to make sure that we keep our eyes on the prize, and it's not just the top of the ticket. It's not just the Trump-Biden competition that we've got to pay attention to. We've got to make sure that we are watching like a hawk for the House and Senate races that are going on, because if Trump wins the election, which I believe he will, and he can't get the House and the Senate help he needs to get the agenda passed, it's going to be a whole lot harder to right the ship. That being said, one of the races that's considered to be very key to this overall is Alabama's new Congressional District 2. So the person who is running as the Republican in that is on the phone with us right now. Caroline Dobson is a Montgomery attorney. She's a Republican. She's facing off against Shamari Figures, who is a longtime Democrat, used to work in the Obama administration. And I'm going to bring her on right now and let her tell us all about her race. Caroline Dobson, how are you?
I'm doing great, Phil. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, listen, I think the last time you were on, we were actually still finishing up the primary or perhaps the runoff, and you are the candidate all the way to the general election. How do you feel, and where are we right now?
Yes, well, I'm very humbled. I'm very excited to be the Republican nominee, and I really feel 2 responsibilities. First and foremost, to fight hard to win this race, to advocate for the folks in District 2, folks that are hardworking and God-fearing and concerned about where this country is headed. And then an equally important obligation to fight the fight and win the race for the future of America. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's highly possible that this race here in District 2 could determine who controls the House. And as you were just saying, there are implications on America for years to come. Of course, we've got to get Trump back in the White House. Of course, we've got to gain control of the Senate. But if we do those 2 things and still lose control of the House, we will not be able to reverse all the harm that the Biden administration has done to this country in such a short time.
No, it's one of those epic level responsibilities to finish this race strong and to win. And Shamari Figures is an extreme liberal. He worked in the Obama administration. His mother has been a liberal member of the Alabama State Senate for many years. I know her personally. I worked with her when I was down there. Now, listen, let's go ahead and describe your district a little bit, because the tail end of what I would call the listening area for Rightside Radio comes into the northern portion of your district. But tell everybody where your district lies.
Yes, so it is part of Mobile up to Montgomery, from Mississippi to Georgia. But, county by county, I'll try to do an abbreviated young boozer listing, although not quite as glib as he is. But all of Washington County, a large part of Mobile County, so all of downtown Spring Hill, Tillman's Corner, part of West Mobile, Pritchard, Sims, Citronelle, Chunchula, and then the southern third of Clark County, South Jackson and points further south, all of Monroe County, Conecuh, Butler, Pike, Crenshaw, Montgomery, Bullock, Macon, Russell, and Barber counties.
Man. All right, so one of the most important things I heard is Conecuh sausage comes from your district.
That is right, and I'm very grateful to have Mr. Sessions, John Crumb Sessions, has been a supporter. I'm very, very grateful to him. Again, a lot of things to be proud of in this district, and a lot of Alabama history in this district. It includes the first state capital, St. Stephen's, the current state capital, Montgomery. A lot of wonderful folks are from icons in Alabama history. Rosa Parks, Hank Williams, they're all from this district. So I'm really enjoyed getting to spend time in communities I'd never been to before, but heard about, for example, Clio, and meet with people that I would have never gotten to meet before. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity and truly inspired and motivated every day to work hard to advocate for the people in this district.
Well, I think your district, and by the way, your district was not drawn in what I would call a favorable sense for Republicans, generally speaking, but at the same time, the indications are this is a very winnable race for you. And You got some national attention. I saw most recently story on 1819 News was that EPAC, which is run by Elise Stefanik out of New York, has endorsed you and said they intend to help you fight for this race. And one of the things that Elise Stefanik said was, this is a sleeper race you guys aren't paying attention to. She's going to win that race. It must be nice hearing that from a national level.
It is. I'm so grateful to have role models like Congresswoman Stefanik, of course, like Senator Britt, who's also been incredibly supportive. Women who are moms, who have school-aged kids, who are also working incredibly hard to try to save this country. And that's why I'm actually headed up to D.C. this evening. Congresswoman Stefanik has a press conference in conjunction with her endorsement tomorrow that I'm really excited to take part in. But, she's also represents a pretty moderate kind of purple district in New York. So I'm also grateful kind of for her advice in running in a purple district, because that's what District 2 is. Again, but I think the message of really fighting for safer communities and more opportunities for our kids will resonate with folks, who may not even consider themselves Republican, but certainly feel abandoned by the Democrat Party, considering just how far left it's gone.
Yeah.
I know a lot of church-going, God-fearing Democrats who were shocked and considered the Transgender Day announcement on Easter just a huge slap in the face, and that's just one example. Again, of just how far left the Democrat leadership has taken the party.
So, and I completely agree. If nothing else, it gives me a lot of cannon fodder for my show. But let me ask you this though. So you get to, and I may have asked you this last time you were on the air, but you get to D.C. You've got a background. You practice law, but if I'm not mistaken, you grew up in like a farm community or in some type of a agribusiness type setting with your family. And then, so what kind of things about you do you want to take to D.C.? Like, what committee assignments would you be looking for to do work on behalf of the state?
Well, I'm open to being on the committee, and I want to be on the committees that best serve the needs of this district. So, and again, given my background, growing up on a farm, obviously interested in ag. As a real estate attorney, real estate and financial services attorney, certainly interested in financial services, but also, the defense industry is such an important part. Defense industry and Maxwell Air Force Base, Air National Guard, Coast Guard, Mobile. So armed services would also be of interest. Of course, who isn't interested in serving on appropriations? I don't know that would be an option for a freshman congressman. And then also, I've also heard that kind of, to use the term sleeper again, sort of a sleeper assignment, but one with opportunity certainly is a small business, because you can really kind of focus on sort of whatever is your kind of passion area, and have some flexibility there. There are so many small business owners in this district, and for me, one of the motivations for me running is just the excess of the executive branch under the Biden administration, and trying to codify some regulatory protections that decrease the agency state, create some consistency for business owners, and some protections for individual citizens. Because I think we may have talked about it the last time I was on, but the fact that there aren't standardized rules of evidence for agency investigations, the fact that there isn't a standardized burden of proof if you're investigated by the IRS versus if you're investigated by OSHA. It's far more likely that you and I, as private citizens, as business owners, become the subject of an agency investigation because it's alleged that we didn't, fill out some form or follow some rule that they say applied. We're far more likely to be in that situation than we are to be, alleged of a felony, and yet a felon has more rights in a court of law than the private citizen or small business owner does, depending on which agency is investigating them. And we have to, in order to ensure that our small businesses can, and large businesses too, can thrive and continue to grow, we've got to have checks on the executive branch, again, consistency in agency investigations, and also so much more transparency in the rulemaking process. We see the Biden administration just issuing out rules at rapid pace that are impacting businesses from nursing homes to construction companies all throughout this district, and it's having a crippling effect on opportunity and growth.
Well, all of that. But listen, there's any number of places where you could serve and fit in. The main thing we got to do is get you there. So if folks are living in North Alabama, if somebody lives in Huntsville and they're like, I've got time on my hands, what does she need? I'll go do it. What would you say to that? Is there a way to plug into the campaign and do some work?
Absolutely, and I've been so grateful and again so humbled by folks from Decatur all the way down to Enterprise who have reached out wanting to help. Again, it's not very common for Alabama to have a contested general election, and I think that excites some people, and I'm grateful for that. We have a website, www.dobson, D-O-B as in Bravo, S-O-N, for F-O-R, Congress.com, and that has a form you can fill out if you, would like to help. Right now, we're trying to get voters registered. Something that Republicans running in Old District 1 and Old District 2, which make up this new district, haven't had to do for a long time.
Yeah.
But again, I think something that will have positive ramifications when it comes to countywide elections, to state legislature elections for years to come. If we get not only existing Republicans motivated and engaged, but again, also get new Republicans registered, that's going to be huge. And then, of course, always financial support is appreciated. That's one of the metrics for the degree to which the RNC decides to play in this race is, of course, fundraising reports. And also, I will say, the Democrats are going to be throwing a lot of money at this race. And there's no replacing hard work, and I know that I will outwork my opponent. I did in the primary, but at the same time, again, I think there are bottomless pockets on the left that are going to be trying to fund this race and all the other swing races throughout the state. So, of course, money always helps.
Well, I know that for a fact, even just from my limited exposure working in the state legislative races. But listen, Caroline, we're about out of time, but I will just say, and you mentioned it a moment ago, Alabamians aren't used to having contested races for Congress, and especially for Congress. But we've been a red state for a long time, and I've said on this show multiple times that while I don't want to see the Democrat Party strengthen, that we can also run the risk of getting lazy and content if we don't have the occasional challenge to rise to. Your race is certainly one of those. So we wish you the best, and we want to stay in touch between now and the general, and we'll just take it all the way to the end. All right.
That sounds great, and hopefully next time in person. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Caroline Dobson, running for Congress for Congressional District 2. Listen, you know anybody in those counties? I'm just telling you, tell them to get ready because this is not a lazy race. This is one where a guy named Shamari Figures, who's a longtime Obama administration Democrat, a super Democrat basically, uber liberal. I mean, put him on par with like Randall Woodfin, mayor of Birmingham, and all the rest of them. He is an uber liberal Democrat who would love nothing more than to take our longtime 6-1 majority Alabama delegation in Congress and change it to a 5-2. And we don't need that. Not at all. All right, let's take a break there, Big Rig. We'll take the break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. I am jumping into the next dipper now. That was, by the way, that was a great segment there with Caroline Dobson. You guys need to understand. If you don't, I say understand. Y'all already know. Most of you already know. We have 7 congressional seats in Alabama. 7 members of Congress that represent us as part of our U.S. delegation. Every state, of course, has their 2 senators. We have Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville. But every state has a different number based upon population for their members of Congress. We have 7. Folks thought we were going to lose one of those in the census. Nope. Turns out that New York and California lost them. Yeah. Alabama, we maintained. In fact, we came pretty close to getting an extra seat. All right. Now, we have the 7. They have almost, gosh, I mean, I can't think when's the last time they had more than what we have right now. But we have one that is traditionally Democrat because of the demographic, not the demographic, but the manner which it's drawn is in largely the biggest pocket of Democrat votes we have in the state, and that is Terry Sewell, our Democrat member of Congress. But the other 6 have been Republicans as long as I can remember, and it's been several decades. 6. We run the risk of losing one of those to the Democrats, so let's don't let it happen. All right, let's jump to the next dipper, though. Now I want to spend some time talking about what happened this past weekend. I hope you heard my monologue when I opened the show, and I called my monologue "Moving Like the Maccabees." So there's a lot to be said right now for the way Israel is conducting this war against Hamas. But one of the things that happened this past weekend was, to me, just next level, because it just clearly indicated that Israel is taking this as a precision fight. This is not what the progressive left's going to try to convey to you, what the progressive left media is going to try and portray to you. This is not some wanton, just like, we're just leveling things, we're just blowing the stuff up, we're just killing people as they stand in the street, we're wiping people out. It's not that. It's a precision, well-executed, highly trained, very disciplined, surgical demolishing of Hamas. In the course of doing that this past weekend, there was a raid by Israeli Special Operations that rescued 4 hostages. Now, I hope you heard my monologue earlier. If you didn't, you can always go back and get it, because we podcast this show and it's available for you. You can get the monologue by itself. The Right Side Way, I called it Moving Like a Maccabee. That's the name of today's podcast, or today's monologue. But folks, what we saw this past weekend is the kind of mission they're going to make movies about. It is absolutely on a scale, by comparison, to some of the greatest hostage rescues you've seen in modern history. And this is a big deal, because it indicates that Israel is all in. They're going to do everything it takes to not just stop Hamas. They're going to do everything it takes to get their people back. When we come back from this, I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to go into the IDF raid. That's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And let's talk about what the Israeli Defense Forces did just this past weekend. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one right here, y'all. I am talking about Alabama. And I mean to say this show goes like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to Gadsden, parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. Hey, before I go any further, by the way, I got to stop and just pause here a second and give you guys something big to think about, all right? So this is a crazy world. Yes, it is. And you're working hard to plan for your future and also stand up for your beliefs. So what if you found out that in the middle of doing all of that, that like some of the investments that you've been putting your retirement dollars into, that they are absolutely contrary to the things you say you believe in? Well, maybe it's time for you to meet Paul Breyer and his team of PhDs and financial experts over at Inspire Advisors, one of our newest advertisers, Inspire Advisors. Look, I'm talking about financial planning that actually considers who you are and what you believe in. These are like solid local experts using biblically responsible investing, data-driven strategies to maximize your return. And they do it in a way, by the way, that has a real impact on your bottom line and the world in which you live. I just call this financial freedom. Absolutely is. So here's something free I'm about to give to you. You ready? Free report. You can go to their website, www.moneypatternwealth.com. That's moneypatternwealth.com. And you can get a free impact report that shows you basically where your investments are going, what kind of things you should be thinking about. So Inspire Advisors, you can also find them other way. Just go to our website, rightsideradio.org. You can go to our sponsor page, click on the sponsors logo for Inspire, and it takes you right to their website. Either way, all said and done, you might want to consider conservative, godly, balanced financial freedom with Inspire Advisors at moneypatternwealth.com. All right, let me move on here. Next dipper of the day, the IDF raid. So if you have not heard, this past weekend, the Israeli Special Operations, which, by the way, are on par with anybody in the world, Israeli Special Operations conducted a raid to rescue 4 hostages. Now, I want to add some flavor to that before we jump in it, because the details of the raid themselves are significant. But what they were doing was rescuing hostages they had no reason to believe were going to be released anytime soon. Hostages, by the way, who were not POWs. They were not soldiers who had been taken in an act of war. These were all 4, generally speaking, I think 3 of them were in their 20s. One was 41 years old. They were literally innocents who were seized, kidnapped in their civilian capacities, no military involvement, and dragged away to Gaza and used as human shields now for the last 8 months. 8 months being held under horrible conditions. We've already found the bodies of a number of hostages who were all, killed in some capacity, who didn't have to. Why were they even there? There's no purpose in taking hostages unless you want to A, get ransom, B, gain influence, or C, use them as human shields. There's no other answer. These were sacrificial lambs to the idea of Hamas having some leverage over Israel. So picture this. Hamas goes into Israel and commits massive atrocities. October 7th last year. Raping, pillaging, laughing their whole way through it, filming it like it was a lark, making their YouTube videos and laughing over the beheading of babies and the things that they were doing to innocent people in their sleep or at a music festival. It was just a tragedy of the highest level. Well over 1,000 Israelis died. It was the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust in one day. Let that sink in. And Israel said, enough. We are not going to, they are not listening to anybody who says, oh, please slow your roll and consider the innocent Palestinians who had nothing to do with. Listen, the innocent Palestinians are the ones who elected Hamas to be their leadership in the Gaza Strip. And I'm not saying they all need to die, but I'm saying that please don't think of this as an innocent community, all right? So this past weekend, story here on the Jerusalem Post, 98th Division of the Israeli Defense Forces, commanded by Brigadier General Dan Goldfuss, orchestrated what's called now a large diversionary operation. But see, that's the classic nature of a diversionary operation, is the Hamas fighters didn't know that. And oh, by the way, here's the other misnomer to get rid of. If you think for a minute that what is happening in Gaza is just Israel being wanton and going through and just leveling stuff and blowing stuff up and killing people in the streets, no. This is a surgically precise, well-orchestrated, highly and intensely disciplined military operation. This particular feint was to draw away active Hamas fighters because the streets, the tunnels, the buildings are still filled with active Hamas fighters. And so they did. 98th Division conducted a diversionary operation, while Israeli Special Operations from a elite counterterrorism unit known as Yamam conducted a surgical strike on two buildings, little cluster of buildings really, in which it was believed that there were 4 hostages being held. And they rescued all 4 of them. Not without a fight. Y'all, they got in there and it became a firefight, and it went on for a while. We're told that despite the fact that there was an ongoing diversion to draw away some of Hamas's strength and take their attention off the scene, that what still happened was a massive firefight. Hamas fighters with small arms fire and what I imagine were RPGs. The article I've got says anti-tank weapons, which I imagine was RPGs, were all over it, and it was a hornet's nest. One of the Yamam vehicles was immobilized somehow, which required them to then, launch a counter-rescue operation. And so the 98th Division pivoted, sent in units for a multi-force rescue operation. They had air operations. Even the Navy took part in some way, mobilizing to extricate both the hostages and the stranded fighters. In the middle of it all, in an area that was called teeming with armed men, in which it was said that every second felt like an eternity, rescue helicopters got in and were able to land on the scene under fire. So it was a hot LZ. One of the hostages that was rescued was young 26-year-old female named Noah Argamani. And Noah Argamani had been seized. There was a video of her being captured by Hamas terrorists at a music festival. A music festival. They rode in on motorcycles and everything, and basically they captured her and then filmed it, and filmed her screaming, "Please don't kill me," as they threw her onto a motorcycle between 2 Hamas terrorists and rode off with her. 8 months later, she's back with her family. I don't know what she endured while she was a captive, but 8 months later, she's home. In the course of this operation, the team commander for the Israeli Yamam unit received a mortal wound. He died later in the hospital. His name was Arnon Zamora. Arnon Zamora. They've already renamed the mission in his name, in his honor, for the purposes of posterity. It's being called Operation Arnon. And what I love is the fact, and I said it in my monologue earlier, is that Israeli officials are saying that he exhibited the heroism and the strength of Judah Maccabee. And if you don't know about the Maccabees, go back and look them up. But in roughly 139 BC, I think it was, the Maccabees led a revolt against the Greeks who had oppressed and occupied Israeli lands. And I believe this is in Judah. And the Maccabees led the guerrilla operation revolt. And it says that even the Greeks said that they were as fast as bears and as strong as lions. And so to be compared to a Maccabee does a couple things. It says who you were as a person. It also says that Israel does not see this as a singular operation in history. They see this as part of the big picture, and they're invoking the memory of the Maccabees. By the way, Hanukkah in part celebrates the Maccabees' victories. And they do not see this as being a singular moment in time. By invoking the Maccabees, I would suggest that Israel is lumping this in with the legacy fight for their own existence against people who hate them just for living. Now, In the meantime, despite the fact that they're holding hostages and they're committing atrocities and they're doing all these things, I'd like to know what IQ is actually required to be a pro-Palestinian protester outside the White House right now. What IQ do you have to have? I'm pretty sure it's low, like functionally illiterate. At the very least, historically and socially and culturally stunted. TheBlaze.com has an article that came out Friday around the same time as this rescue operation going off. Pro-Palestinian activists were demanding an end to the war in Gaza, staging a massive protest that surrounded the White House. Smoke bombs were ignited. Progressives vehemently demanded that President Joe Biden be arrested for war crimes. Here's the thing. Code Pink is involved. What the heck? Code Pink, the feminist grassroots organization, Code Pink. Do they know what Hamas did to women? And yet Code Pink is out there helping organize this event. By the way, they were vandalizing Lafayette Park, graffiti paint all over the statues, lighting smoke bombs, hanging their Palestinian flags on things, chasing away U.S. Park Police and Secret Service out of Lafayette Square. Where is law enforcement? Because I got news. If this was a bunch of Proud Boys out there, if these were 3%ers, if they dared to carry a Gadsden flag or a flag of some type that relates to patriotism, they would have had riot police out there. But no, you can terrorize patriotic Americans. You can vandalize historic statues. You can surround the White House and call for death to Biden as they were literally holding up mock heads of a bloody Biden head, which is just beyond the pale. You can do all these things, but God and have no threat of charges whatsoever. Y'all finished? Okay, great. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate you leaving the graffiti. Could you just leave the spray can there? Thank you. But God help you if you go down to Jacksonville, in Florida, and you do, a donut in the middle of a pride flag mural in the street. At that point, they do a manhunt, and they're going to charge you with a felony. Yeah. All that happened this past weekend. I'll tell you about after the break when we come back. I'll tell you about the press reactions, because the press reactions have been rather mixed. You got an opportunity here for a story, y'all, but no. You're going to get out there and start talking about how the hostages were released. No, they weren't. They were rescued. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Like making common sense like a superpower. Don't forget, coming up after the top of the hour break, we have Alabama State Auditor Andrew Sorrell on. He's going to talk to us about some pretty interesting developments for him, like his conservative business getting debanked. So that's coming up after the top of the hour. Let me continue right now, though, with this discussion about the IDF raid, the Israeli Defense Forces. One of the things that's so maddening is to watch the liberal media try to pivot on this thing. Israel just had a successful rescue of hostages that had been held as human shields after a tragedy that occurred last year. They've been held for 8 months. 8 months. And then you see things like the Washington Post goes immediately for a story here about the Red State, by the way. Washington Post goes immediately for headlines like, more than 200 Palestinians killed. What? By the way, completely unverified. The numbers they're using come directly from the Hamas-controlled Gaza Ministry of Health. Okay. That's like asking Hitler, what do you think, Hitler? How are the Germans doing today? I mean, it's asinine. Also, by the way, no indication about the so-called 200 deaths. How many of those were combatants? How many of those were members of Hamas? And for that matter, maybe civilians who just took up arms to fire at Israeli soldiers. And then there's the BBC interview. Yeah. The BBC interview where a guy named Jonathan Conricus, who's a former IDF spokesman, was being interviewed. And the anchor just immediately says, basically, let's talk about the death toll among Palestinians. It didn't ask about, how long they've been held. Didn't ask about how their families reacted to them being home. Just wanted to talk about the death toll among Palestinians and whether or not that had been anticipated. Should we talk about the Palestinian or the civilian impact? And the guy who was being interviewed, Conricus, was kind of taken aback, and he goes, yeah, I think we should talk about the civilians. Like, how about we investigate why these people were being held in civilian apartments for 8 months? Why did they do that? What was the role of the surrounding community and the hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinians who for sure were aware that Israeli hostages were being held right there in their midst, and were they complicit with Hamas? Of course, he comes back with, we don't know they were necessarily complicit. He says, for sure, of course, we can't anticipate Israel to be warning ahead of a raid. Anyway, the bottom line is this. The liberal media went straight to, once again, the Palestinian defense. It's like a reflex action now. Well, hey, be careful. Code Pink might come and protest the CNN studio. We better ask the questions about Palestinians first. The Palestinians were the guilty parties here. Just saying. CNN put up a banner that said, hostages released. No, they weren't. Hostages were rescued. There's a big difference. The release sounds an awful lot like the captors were the ones who were saying, we're going to let you go now. No, there was no humanity here. We don't know if they would have ever come home. I will say this. One report I saw said that the Biden administration had in some way lent support to the Israeli operations. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they used some form of intelligence, satellite imagery. I don't know if they used training, had some kind of advisory assistance, although they don't need it because they are fully mission capable. All we know is that something was done in the background to assist. I hope that's true. Because what immediately happened was right after the Israeli hostage rescue, we get Jake Sullivan from the National Security Advisor immediately asking for a ceasefire. He says the best way to get all the hostages home to protect Palestinian civilians is to end this war. Why did he say it that way? The best way to get all the hostages home and to protect Palestinian civilians is to end the war. The aggressor in this case, regardless of what Code Pink says, the aggressor in this case was and remains Palestinians. Maybe Hamas, and not everybody's a member of Hamas, but guess what? Hamas was elected into office as a ruling, controlling body in Gaza. And the very first thing out of Jake Sullivan's mouth is the best way to get all the hostages home and to protect Palestinian civilians is to end this war. And the best way to end this war is for Hamas to say yes to the deal President Biden announced. Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, how about just congratulations, Israel. You spanked them. And you showed them that savages who raid your country are not allowed to just walk away. All right, we're going to switch gears. I'll take some text messages a little bit later on, but right now we're going to take a break. We'll come right back. State Auditor Andrew Sorrell calling in, talking about getting debanked. What? Yep, you heard me. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alabama's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, and oh yeah, sometimes the international. And like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3. And I'll just remind you guys that we've got a lot of things happening out there in the world that sometimes come in through the back door. And I'm doing this whole next dipper called Over Your Shoulder. There's a lot of backdoor ways that liberals are trying to do what I would call conditioning your behavior. And they're also doing what's called viewpoint discrimination, which is the legal term for basically saying, despite the fact that you have a right to feel the way you do, we don't want you to feel the way you do, so we're going to discriminate against you. Well, there's several ways this is happening. You've got situations like debanking, which we'll get into more in detail in a moment. You've got stuff like, did you know that your apps and or your connected car devices may be sending data to your insurance companies that could get you blacklisted for the way you drive? And oh, by the way, did you know that there are red flag laws out there that are simply ways of passing laws to prevent you from buying guns because somebody somewhere thinks maybe you shouldn't have one? All of this stuff is what I would call looking over your shoulder to see what you're doing. It's like sitting on a plane, you realize the person next to you is reading your screen on your laptop. It's just invasive. It's wrong. So that being said, let me start with this. Debanking is a big deal, and somebody who has experienced it firsthand is our own Alabama State Auditor, Andrew Sorrell. Andrew Sorrell served as a member of the Alabama House of Representatives. He was elected this past election season to a term as a state auditor and is doing a great job. He's got a piece that came out on 1819 News that talks about him being debanked personally and why it shouldn't be allowed to happen. So without further ado, Andrew Sorrell, State Auditor, how you doing?
Phil, it's good to be on with you. This is an important topic, and it's really seen quite a big uptick over the last few years, so I appreciate you getting me on to talk about it.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you making time, and I think I've talked enough. You go ahead and lay it out there. What happened to you, and how'd you put all the pieces together on this?
You know, normally when I go on the radio to talk about an issue, I'm talking about an issue that honestly doesn't necessarily affect me personally. It affects other people or citizens in Alabama, some constitutional right we're defending or whatever. No, this one really hits home with me because it happened to me.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with the fact that I was an elected official or anything. It had nothing to do with that. It's the fact that I owned a gun store. That's what it was. So debanking is when a bank or an insurance company, credit card processor, in my case, decides that they don't want to do business with you because they don't like the type of business that you're doing. So this happened to me in 3 stages over 3 different years. The first stage was we had a credit card with a large national bank. If I said the name, everybody would recognize it instantly. You see the commercials all over TV. We had a very large credit line with them. We did a lot of business with them, especially in the early days when we were trying to get our business up and off the ground. One day we received a letter from them. They were dropping our credit card. No explanation, just in 30 days, we're closing your account. You can continue making minimum payments or you can pay it off, whatever you want to do, but you can no longer charge. We're closing your account. So and I thought, well, that's odd.
Just out of the blue.
We've never missed
a payment.
Correct.
God.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were an excellent customer of this large bank, and we were quite confused by it. Never crossed my mind that it had anything to do with the fact that we were a gun store at the time. So we just went and got a different credit card somewhere else and moved on with life until the next year when our credit card processor sent us a letter saying, we're dropping you in 30 days. Again, no explanation. Now, the credit card processors, again, we're a great customer for them. We're doing about $1 million in revenue at each of our 2 stores. They're getting a cut on that. Any of the transactions that aren't cash sales, they're getting a cut on. And they're making great money off of us. Why would a credit card processor drop our business?
Yeah.
And it's not even like we're not paying the bill. Like, they withhold their own payment from our bill. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were great customers for both of these 2 entities. So at this point, we're starting to get a little bit suspicious. We're like, what is going on here? And we said, we can't risk this happening again. We need to go to a local bank. We bank with First Metro Bank in Florence. We went to a small local bank where I know the people. They're not woke. I literally know the owner. I went to high school with his son, right? We set up credit card processing services with a local bank. So, all right, we got that fire put out. Until the next year, when another letter came from our insurance company dropping us.
My
and
gosh.
I was like, what is going on? It's like we can't do business for all of the other companies that don't want to do business with us. So we called our insurance broker and we said, can we price out, get another insurance? And by the way, why do you think they dropped us? And his comment was, oh, they're dropping all the gun stores.
Oh, yeah.
And then it all clicked. It all made sense. We're being debanked for political purposes. We're operating a legal business, but they don't like the kind of business that we're in, so they're just not going to do business with us anymore. So that's my own personal debanking story. But Phil, the scary thing is, somebody like me, at least if I write an op-ed about it, 1819 News will publish it statewide, gets a lot of attention, a lot of coverage. What happens when the average Joe gets debanked?
Yeah.
Right? It's not a politician. How is that person supposed to tell their story or supposed to fight back? And this brings to mind the story of Nigel Farage, the Brexit leader in Great Britain, who was debanked for the exact same reason. They were mad. The big woke corporations were mad at him for leading the Brexit charge, and they decided at the same time to debank him. Unfortunately, they had some open records laws and stuff over there. He was able to get the files, copies of the files where they debanked him. They're talking in emails back and forth about how they're going to do this. And their conclusion was Nigel Farage is unlikely to go to the media with this story because it would be personally embarrassing for him to say that he had been debanked. And he said, they don't know me at all.
I've met him. I've met him briefly, and that is absolutely not who he is. One of my favorite speeches is his speech to the EU right after the Brexit vote. But you're telling. I'm going to tell you what. You're telling me something that I have heard from other places. We had a major gun accessory provider, manufacturer, that was thinking about advertising on Rightside, and right as they were about to, the guy had to contact me and goes, "Hey man, the banking thing has gotten crazy for us, and I think we're in a position right now where I've got to reassess everything for the moment." And it was because of the exact same things you're talking about around the same time frame you're talking about. All of the ESG scoring and everything else got crazy for a while there, and corporations just gave in to this. And the idea is basically that the consumer means nothing to us anymore. It's all about getting our ESG score up.
Yeah, that's right. And now let's be fair. I want to give a little bit. It's not all just the big banks going woke. The big banks themselves are being pressured by, the government, by the FBI in the case of Twitter. Remember when Twitter files came out, the FBI had basically said, "Hey, can you suppress these people's? We don't, or make sure their reach doesn't go anywhere. We don't want people seeing what they're posting." So they're being influenced by the government. And then, let's not forget about the Operation Choke Point back in, what was that? It was the Obama administration, 2014 era.
Right.
And the FDIC and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency warned financial institutions that doing business with ammunition sellers, coin dealers, etc., increased their risk of fraud. Hint, hint, stop doing business with them. And, that is literally the government just telling big banks to debank their own customers. So they're getting pressure as well. But my position is, as a conservative, you don't like to tell businesses who they have to do business with and whatnot. But my first comment to that would be, well, first of all, we already say business can't discriminate. You can't not do business with somebody because they're African American. You can't choose to not do business with them because they're a female. How about you can't not choose to do business with them because they're exercising their constitutional right to sell firearms?
Yeah.
I think it's a discrimination issue. And number two, we bail these big banks out with taxpayer money every time they get into trouble. Okay, so if you're too big to fail, then you're not too big for us to tell you that you can't debank conservatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can pretty much guarantee that there were no credit cards shut off at abortion clinics or medical marijuana sales. They're just they can still process just fine in some of these institutions where you can have all the vices of life, but the idea that a constitutionally protected sale of a firearm draws the ire it just flies in the face of both common sense and good business practice. Well, listen, I happen to know that Attorney General Steve Marshall is part of a fight against this. What do you know about that?
Well, I know a little bit about it. Oddly enough, I had lunch with Steve Marshall today. It's funny you mention him. We sat there for about an hour and a half and chatted, and I saw in his office before I came over, you may remember this, his Conservative Policy Warrior Award from 2020, which was the same year I got my award back when you worked at the Alabama Policy Institute. Yes. So we had a nice little reminiscence about that. But, I believe he signed on to a coalition of 15 state attorneys general, sending a letter to the Bank of America CEO, Brian Moynihan, for conditioning access to its services on customers having the bank's preferred religious or political views.
Yeah.
So same type thing. So he's actively engaged in this fight. We actually talked about this. I asked him if he had read my op-ed. He had not seen it yet, but he said he was going to go read it after we left for lunch. But yeah, we're lucky to have Steve Marshall in this state because every time I read an article about what he's doing, I agree with it. I'm so thankful for him speaking out on issues like this.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't realize that an attorney general is not just there to prosecute crimes; he's there to defend the interests of the state sometimes too, and this would be one. On writ large, this is a defense of the interests of the citizens of the state who don't deserve not to get debanked for simply having a belief or a position or a lawfully opportunity to sell something like a gun.
Yeah, and I think we should also mention there's a case for the U.S. Supreme Court right now. I talk about it in the op-ed. The New York State Department of Financial Services Superintendent Maria Volo, who issued a statement to banks suggesting they should cut ties with the NRA and other Second Amendment advocacy organizations so they might suffer, quote, reputational risk. And I noted it was kind of like Don Corleone saying, oh, it'd be a shame if something bad happened to that nice business of yours, And these organizations took the signal and discontinued their relationship with the NRA, and that case is before the Supreme Court right now.
It's
basically a de facto blockade of gun sales.
That's such a great analogy too. It'd be a shame if something happened to this nice business. Yeah,
I don't get the accent right, but yes, that's
bring the cannoli.
That's exactly what right.
All right. Well, listen, State Auditor Andrew Sorrell, you are a policy warrior. We appreciate you. Thank you for sharing personal insights and. I need to get you and Nigel Farage on the show together. That'd be awesome. No,
that would be amazing.
All right, listen, you have a great day. Keep us posted if you hear anything new, all right?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on.
All right, take care. All right, we're going to take a break right now, but I'm going to continue this thread because, folks, right there's a situation where banks are looking over a business's shoulder and saying, you appear to be doing things that we decided to take a stand against, so we're just going to make your business life miserable. I got more examples. You're going to want to hear it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, making it cool to be a conservative. So we're talking about over your shoulder. Did you know how much of your daily behaviors are monitored? It's a little creepy, just to be honest. I'm not going to lie. It's like mega creepy. It's like next level peeping Tom creepy. Like you can't even look out your window and see the peeping Tom because the peeping Tom has got some kind of camouflage on peeping Tom. It's like the predator up in the trees and you can't see him, but you know something's there and it's hunting you. Creepy. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but the reality is it's still freaking creepy. So here's the deal. Banks, insurance companies, apps on your phone, auto manufacturers, all of it tracks your daily behavior. We're starting to find more and more now that people are out there that are becoming very skilled at the ability to compile the data and then sell the data, and then people are willing to take the data and change how they treat you as a consumer. You got right now, there's a whole lot going on about the debanking thing. So there's one Christian law firm that's really rocking the case right now, Alliance Defending Freedom. Alliance Defending Freedom is a massive ally in the fight against liberal progressive efforts to stymie our society. Alliance Defending Freedom will show up in almost every state in the union and go to war on stuff and using the court system as its battleground. But Alliance Defending Freedom is applauding a major bank chain for rolling back one of its controversial policies. Story here on Fox News, Dateline May 24th, so just a couple weeks ago. JP Morgan Chase, it says, the largest bank in the U.S. rolled back what it called its WePay service. WePay is something that merchants use. It required merchants to refrain from accepting payments or using the service for what it called social risk issues. Do what? Yeah. JP Morgan Chase got called on the carpet because they had WePay services discouraging people from, or merchants from using it if it involved what it called allegations of hate groups, systemic racism, sexual harassment, and corporate culture issues. What is that? That's called big tech or big corporations trying to influence public policy without being elected to do so. Hate groups. Don't forget the Southern Poverty Law Center, that race-based hating organization that abuses conservatives from Montgomery, Alabama, puts out the national hate group list, and groups like Moms for Liberty are on it. For the love. So if Moms for Liberty wanted to open a credit account to be able to do business, you're going to wind up having JP Morgan Chase discouraging, the use of their WePay services. Well, anyway, ADF senior counsel, Jeremy Tedesco, said in an interview that Chase has used this policy to discriminate on the basis of viewpoint. So that's the legal term you should know, by the way, viewpoint discrimination. It put everybody who used WePay and Chase, the biggest bank in America, in a difficult position. But we now have apparently the ability to say that when you push back hard enough, ADF did, that it makes a change. I mean, we got examples here like Chase Bank decided to debank Ambassador Sam Brownback's National Committee for Religious Freedom. No reason. They also decided to deny, using its WePay system, to deny ticket payment processing for a Republican event where Donald Trump Jr. was going to be the speaker. It was being run by a group called Defense for Liberty. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is this. When you push back hard enough, when they realize they've been caught, sometimes you can actually get your way. And apparently they have rolled back that policy. Now, when we get back from this break, I'm going to tell you what's happening with your car. Your car? Yes. This is creepy, like next level creepy. Information about just driving down the road, maybe deciding what your driving score is. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the northern half of the most beautiful state in the nation. This one, Alabama. Y'all know I'm talking about this show. Goes like way down south of Birmingham and up north of Huntsville and Tuscaloosa, back to guys to parts of Georgia, Tennessee, and even Mississippi. All thrown in just for good measure. Hey, before I go any further, let me just pause. I want to tell you about one of our newest advertisers, Inspire Advisors. Inspire Advisors. Now listen, this is a crazy world, as evidence for the fact that I have a show that has to have all these things to talk about, right? This is a crazy world. Here you are in the middle of it all, working hard to plan for your future, stand up for your beliefs. Well, what if you found out, though, that in the middle of doing so, that some of your investments were actually going to things that you do not at all stand for? Well, maybe it's time for you to meet Paul Breyer and the team of PhDs and financial experts that are at Inspire Advisors. Inspire Advisors. I'm talking about financial planning, y'all, that considers like who you are and what you believe in as much as anything financial. These are solid local experts using biblically responsible investing, data-driven strategies to maximize your return, and they're doing so in a way that actually has a real impact, not just on your bottom line, but also the world in which you live. This is what I would call true financial freedom. So here, I'm going to give you something free. You ready? I can give you the opportunity to go get a free impact report. Go to their website, Inspire Advisors at moneypatternwealth.com. That's www.moneypatternwealth.com, all one word, and get a free impact report. Sort of assess where your stuff stands right now. Oh, you might be surprised. That's Inspire Advisors at www.moneypatternwealth.com. You can also go to our website, rightsideradio.org, click on the sponsors page, and just go to their website based on the logo you'll see there in front of you. Just check them out. Inspire Advisors, conservative, godly, balanced financial freedom. Inspire Advisors at moneypatternwealth.com. All right, back on this Last Dipper. We'll take you all the way through to go home time right now on a Monday afternoon. I'm talking about over your shoulder, like the creepiness of finding out that someone's looking over your shoulder and like reading what you're writing, reading what your screen says while you're in the plane. Someone who's in the library and they happen to glance over there to see what you got going on. It's just creepy, man. It's invasive. Like, mind your own business. Leave my stuff alone. You pull out your wallet and someone wants to see what all you got in there. Now, how about stop looking in my purse, please? Well, not my purse, Charlene's purse, while we're on the bus, or who knows? All I'm saying is this. It's invasive when people do that one-on-one, so why should a company be allowed to get away with it? And yet that's what we're seeing with things like debanking, and in this one I'm about to tell you about, driving scores. Did you know you may have a driving score? So Car and Driver did a story, came out in March. It was in response to a detailed article in the New York Times that says that what we're seeing more and more of right now is that popular features in new cars like OnStar and all the others, the devices that actually connect you to something, I don't know for a fact, but I can't help but wonder if Sirius Radio might be involved. You've got the 911 functions in your car. You've got Wi-Fi hotspot apps in your car. And then you've got apps on your phone while you're in the car. And all of these are considered to be like a gold mine for data. And there are now companies that specialize in compiling that data and then selling it. And they, by the way, they make a huge amount of money to sell it. I once had a lawsuit with a guy in Huntsville who made his millions simply by gathering up lists of names and selling them to people that wanted the lists of names. That's just obnoxious. But LexisNexis, which I use for legal research, LexisNexis is one of the companies that collects all this data. And they literally make it available to the insurance companies. Things you didn't even know was being said about you. Oh, we see over here that apparently he's gone past the speed limit like 3 or 4 times in the last week. Better raise the rates. And that's what they do. It's called usage-based insurance. It's where they look to see how your behavior has been, and then they give you an insurance quote based upon what they can see of your usage, things you didn't know could be seen, things you can't even see for yourself. It's so bad that even in the state of California is looking at investigating this because it's invasive. Like OnStar has a thing called the Smart Driver Program, apparently. I don't use OnStar, I don't like Alexa in my house. I don't like OnStar in my car. I don't like the little Progressive chips, Progressive Insurance, they give you the chip. Just insert this into your dash and we'll give you a better rate. No, you won't. You'll deny my coverage when I get an accident because you'll say you were going 2 miles an hour over the speed limit because we could see it. Anyway, OnStar has a thing called the Smart Driver Program. A lot of folks don't even realize that when they get the new car, it's activated automatically, like for a 90-day trial, and it's tracking you the whole time. LexisNexis has a thing they call the telematics exchange. They gather up like millions of people's data and they sell it. They even sell it back to automakers. Here's a story for you. How about this? A guy named Rob Leathern, and this is I pulled this out of a story off of yahoo.com. Rob Leathern was a tech executive in Texas, and he got like this innocuous little email, right, from Toyota. Good news, Robert. You've been identified by Toyota as a safe driver. And he's like, what? How'd you identify me? Promised him big savings from Progressive Insurance. Just get a quote, go online for his, his SUV. So he clicked on the link in the email. It took him to a Toyota insurance website, told him to enter his zip code. He could get a quote. And if he clicked the quote, the website then informed him, by the way, he would authorize a company called Connected Analytics Services to send his contact information and all his vehicle ID and certain, quote, vehicle driving data to Progressive Insurance. So he wanted to know what was going on. So he had to really push, and he finally got a report that detailed like the previous, 6 months of his driving habits. Y'all, I kid you not. The driving summary had his mileage. It had how many times his car safety systems had been engaged, the number of times he had braked and accelerated at certain rates. It had all the things that insurance companies wanted to see to determine whether he was a good defensive driver. It had a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet with time-stamped lists of every time that he had done certain offending events, they called them, and the latitude, longitude for where they occurred, like they knew where he was at the time. This is nuts. In the speeding tab, there were more than 200 second-by-second entries for times that he had exceeded the speed limits at certain areas. Every bit of this went into his safe driving score that he didn't even know was being gathered. So the thing goes on to say, you may have a safe driving score out there, and you didn't know they were gathering up your analytics. And it's coming back to haunt you next time you get an insurance premium hike. Like, where's one guy in here in this article who said he was shocked when he got something in the mail saying that his rates were going up 21%. He's like, what? I've never had an accident. Yeah, but you appear to have a safe driving score that's lower than where's the score come from? People looking over your shoulder, that's where it's coming from.
That's why I like older cars.
Older cars rule, man.
Just gas and old combustion engine, that's it.
You can raise the hood and you can tell what you're looking at.
Yep. No computer chips, no alien technology. Just
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
When the zombie apocalypse happens, we'll all be driving classic trucks and Mustangs and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. All right, so there's that. So now we got debanking. That's the banks looking over your shoulder, deciding they don't like the kind of business you're running. Or maybe you're servicing the wrong kind of clientele. And so they make it hard for you to do your banking. Banking is the lifeblood of any business. I can just tell you for a fact. And then you've got safe driving scores with all the little devices in your car and on your phone, gathering your data and sending it to people who want to compile it and decide whether you should have the right insurance rate or a higher one. And then you got red flag laws. Oh, geez, yeah. So red flag laws is where someone else decides that you are maybe a threat to yourself or others. And so they enter you into what's called a ERPO, an extreme risk protection order, where basically the local judges and police can temporarily, quote unquote, seize your weapons. Come to your house and say, we have an extended extreme risk protection order. It's a red flag. And we need to, we understand you have certain pistols and firearms and otherwise in the house that we need to scarf up, please. Bring them to the front door. Actually, we need better escort you back there. We want to see what else you got. That's what you can imagine is going to happen. And then while you're in the house, oh, sir, what is over here in this closet? I'm sorry, where's your warrant? But red flag laws, they're a big deal because imagine how it could be abused. You've done nothing wrong, but you're going through, let's just go and throw it out there, like a bad divorce. And the other side is willing to do whatever it takes to keep you from having child custody. And next thing you know, there's a red flag on your name. We think he's a threat to himself or others. Better seize his firearms. Oh, funny how that worked out in the custody battle. How about someone who believes that you've done them wrong in business? They file a report on Facebook, and next thing you know, it's grown into a complaint, and then pretty soon they want to get an ERPO with your name on it. In Nashville, Tennessee, you might want to know that just about 2 weeks ago, Governor Bill Lee signed legislation that preempts local municipalities from enforcing ERPOs. Now, the crazy thing is, he had said he was favorable to this, but the Republican legislature said, you know what? No, we're not doing that, Governor. You cannot have ERPOs in the state of Tennessee because, by God, we're Tennessee. And so, thankfully, ERPOs are now banned effective immediately upon the governor's signature. People looking over your shoulder, deciding whether you should have a firearm. Yeah. And then you got ESG credit scores. They're actually called social credit scores. This is a big thing in China, by the way. Social credit scores. Are you a good citizen? Does this feel creepy? We're going to talk about it when we get back. We'll close out the show with this and some of your text messages, but social credit scores. Well, Ron DeSantis has stepped up again. He's put a ban on them. I'll tell you all about that when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. They're looking over your shoulder right now. We're right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. Hey, by the way, real quick before I go to the phones, I will tell you this, that a lot of what you're talking about right now with all this looking over your shoulder, it all relates back to the idea of an ESG score, environmental, social, governance. It's this push within corporate America to try and shape all of our behaviors by making sure the companies that service us or keep us in business or that we buy from or whatever else, that they all have a environmental or social or governance woke stance. And the woke stance is actually graded. I mean, and then sometimes companies brag about their ESG score. They get better rates at the bank than you and I would. I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Just so you know, Governor Ron DeSantis just last month, early May, just a little over a month ago, he signed a bill to ban woke ESG investments in the state of Florida. In his words, he said ESG is officially DOA in the state of Florida. It's a great slogan. I mean, before that, it was woke goes to Florida to die, right? But yeah, DeSantis has said, at the end of the day, his quote said, at the end of the day, they're trying to exercise power over our society. They're trying to change society. They're trying to change policy when it comes to things they don't like. The bill forbids state and local governments from placing things like pension funds or depositing money with financial institutions that discriminate against their customers because of political opinions, speech, or affiliations, or religious beliefs. Listen, that's all this debanking, all of this insurance, looking over your shoulder and figuring out whether they like you or don't like you, the credit score, the driving score, the data metrics coming out of your car, all of this is just like China's social credit score. Or in China, they actually rank you as to whether you're a good citizen. You can be allowed to travel or not travel from China based upon whether you are considered to be a socially acceptable citizen. That is so antithetical to who we are as a people. The idea that it's been allowed to infiltrate this far is wrong. Let me run to the phones real quick before go home time. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, brother, how you doing?
Had my fish, and I'm north of Nashville. I'm doing really good.
It's a good one today. Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Hey, you talk about being tracked.
Yeah.
You would be unbelievable how tracked I am in here.
Oh, man. Well,
I've got a camera pointing forward and 3 feet from my face. It watches my eyes, watches everything, and it's recorded into perpetuity, until 2 years after I leave this company.
Holy smokes!
They've got they can go back. They can tell you the RPM. They can show you pictures of where I've, draw back at any time, see the speed I'm going, everything, day or night.
It's it's a little bit creepy. So, I mean, at some point, do you just get used to it? I mean, do you like scratch that itch even though you know the camera's on?
Yeah, you don't pick your nose near it.
Oh God, yeah.
But yeah, it's.
Now let me ask you this: Do they ever call you in and go, Jeff? We've been reviewing the monitor, and it appears that you have been texting and driving. Do they ever do anything like that with your drivers?
No, well, oh yeah, they do. They can do anything like that. But since I only just push a button and say words, that's not bad.
Wow. Yeah, that is a little creepy. I mean, I guess to some degree, as an employee, you have the choice to leave. If this was your private vehicle, though, that'd be a whole lot worse.
Yeah. And this is AI technology. Actually, the company had a lawsuit that they had to pay everybody in Illinois $800 a piece. That they turned on some kind of AI stuff that had facial recognition, so they'd know who was in the vehicle without even having to sign in on the computer or anything.
Yeah.
And they did it without their consent, and they had to settle a big lawsuit over that.
So I guess the whole thing about having this thing on the back of the truck that says, "How's my driving? Call 1-800 yada yada yada." That's not even necessary anymore because they can tell how your driving is.
Exactly. Yeah. But hey, going on this thing about the credit cards and everything.
Yeah.
What happens if somebody says, I don't, these gay people are selling flags or something, and say, if you don't want to respond that no more, would that be discrimination as well?
So, hang on. What's your question again, though? If gay people have flags, what?
Well, no. If you had two gay people who are selling, gay pride stuff and everything, like out of a store and everything, and they say, well, we're no longer going to fund that. How long do you think it'd be for a lawsuit to come out?
Oh, yeah. No, shoot. Are you kidding me? I mean, look at down in Florida where the city of Jacksonville is ready to do a manhunt and charge felonies for kids on scooters who put skid marks on the pride mural they painted on the street. I'm like, good gosh. No, that's the golden calf right now, man. They've got all the leeway they need in the law for the moment.
Oh, I know. It's completely ridiculous. It's getting worse every day. I mean, you just got to take a stand, and if you don't take a stand, they're just going to take over.
Well, brother, just taking a stand is what the show's all about. Hey, listen, I got about 1 minute for the breaks before we head out of here, so you be safe on the road, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, all right?
Thank you, Phil. Got your shirt, got your autographed pictures. I love it.
Awesome. Good deal.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Bye.
John from Huntsville has the grades in. He says, if my texter will please stop buffering. Oh, my gosh. Here we go. He says, Big Rig, your awesome performance today gets an A+. Today's winner is obviously Phil with an A++. I like it when he puts the word obviously on that. Congratulations. Also want to say I'm looking forward to tomorrow's Taco Tuesday episode. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. As always, man, appreciate you. Brand new texter. Wow. One guy says my wife was asked by her doctor if there were any guns in the house. Holy smokes. All right, listen, they are looking over your shoulder, but take heart because we're keeping an eye on this thing, y'all. We're going to keep monitoring this. If they can monitor us, we can monitor them right back. That's what you got to do. You guys have an amazing night. We're back here tomorrow at 2. See you then.